It's time for Trench Talk, for your weekly infusion of metal and otherwise heavy music. I'm your host, Flight of Icarus from MetalTrenches.com. As always, if you have not already, please do subscribe to the channel, follow us on social media, or better yet, sign up for our mailing list. Today I have an interview with New York band The Illusory Self. We're talking about their new EP, Dead Gods, and the frontman Dan is actually a good friend of mine, so I couldn't resist the opportunity to sit down with him and talk about nostalgic metal topics in addition to the music that the band is working on. Hope you enjoy it. I did want to start this off by just kind of throwing out to the listeners two fun things about this particular podcast. One, The Illusory Self has two members of the Hudson Horror who are responsible for kind of the theme song to Trench Talk. And then also, Dan and I have been talking through Messenger for like 3 years now? Somewhere around there?
More like 4, dude, since 2015.
Yeah, and this is the first time we've ever actually heard each other's voices. Well, you've heard my voice on the podcast now, but this is the first time we've actually spoken.
Yeah. Actually, I was thinking about that too, how our music is the intro. I've written articles for Metal Trenches. I think that you were the first person to really get the Hudson Horror. I remember that first review you wrote. I was going over it with our guitar player, and he was like, yeah, that's spot on. This guy gets it exactly. And, I was telling my friend the other day how I was going to go on the podcast, and I was like, yeah, my friend John, who I've actually never spoken to, known for 4 years.
It's a weird thing with the internet now, but glad to finally be actually speaking. Should we probably just start off with, introducing yourselves, letting us know a little bit more about what is the Illusory Self? How would you define what style of music it is and all that?
Yeah, sure. So
it's all an illusion.
Yeah, so basically the Illusory Self is kind of Steve's baby. It started out that I don't know, Steve, how did you come up with it?
I just started writing stuff at home and it sounded weird.
So, yeah, kind of in the origin of the band, it was I don't know, it's just we kind of stick to themes of kind of duality at every level. I don't know, on the first album or the first EP, there was themes of song title and concept was something rooted in kind of pop culture. The first song was a Twin Peaks reference, and the second song was actually pulling from Bane lyrics. And then when it came to the actual lyrical content of the music, it was all real world stuff. So while we were doing it, the overarching theme is kind of, the Illusory Self, things are not what it seems, be that in terms of, culture, reality, just understanding of your own self. So it's kind of, it's not like a theme band by any means, but that was kind of the inspiration for it.
Cool. How would you kind of define what the sound of the music is?
I don't know. I guess you could say it's because Steve and Tyreek are probably two of the most talented musicians I've ever met. So I don't know. It's tech deaf musicians LARPing as a metalcore band.
It's just a weird blend of different genres under, extreme metal, whether it be death metal, black metal, deathcore, metalcore, melodic death metal. It's multiple subgenres kind of melded together. So what I think, I think it works with what we've done so far.
Well, plus there's also sampling and orchestration and some things that you don't always get on extreme metal releases. So it's, from my perspective, it's pretty unique in that regard. And I tend to bring a little bit of jazz, a little bit of fusion into the writing circle as well.
You're going to have to add that description to your about page. I think that's the best best I could have heard too.
So yeah, I mean, definitely. And now that Tyreek's in the band too, there's definitely we're trying to inject some more of this cerebral stuff into it. But I mean, Steve and I really, and Tyreek too, we just love really just aggressive, violent music. And, it's with maybe with past bands we've been in, or Steve also plays in this band, Dead Wig. Like maybe there's things that like you don't want to do because it doesn't necessarily, fit the genre, so you don't know how it's going to be, received. But with this band in particular, it's like, it's just for us, really. You know what I mean? So there's no kind of like target listener. Like we don't really care. We're just kind of writing what we want to write because it pleases us, and it's it's a lot of fun because of that.
Yeah, I Dan and I, coming from the Hudson Horror, we with that band definitely had a kind of sound that we wanted to achieve, which was a bit more melodic and more progressive in some ways. And so with this project, it's been cool because we just kind of throw caution to the wind and doing things like sampling, which I'm always excited to have samples and orchestration and music, and not really be restricted to what we can include is really cool. So it's been fun to be in the band and throw some of these ideas around.
And I really love the eerie aspect that I think we've thrown into the music so far. That was one of the big things with me wanting to get Dan on board, is that his lyrics sound absolutely tortured at times, and I really love adding that aspect to the music.
Do you have any particular like favorite parts of the EP at this point?
I love the bridge, the middle section in Incendiary.
Yeah.
It just like, the track is just slamming you in the face and then it just drops out into this melodic section, but it still sounds like the vocals are just like so aggressive, and then it goes right back into like a really slow like slam breakdown, and it's almost like each section is like so unexpected, but somehow it just all worked. And to me, like, that's my favorite part. I think I like when that track kind of dies down for a second and punches you in the gut again.
So funny thing about that song, I'd say that's definitely your favorite too, Steve. So yeah, Steve basically like, we were like, all right, let's just write a song that's just like stupid slam and, kind of take it from there. We threw some progressive stuff in it. And for a while I was having like trouble writing the lyrics, maybe for like a month or two. And then, something happened and I was like really pissed off at someone, and I just wrote the whole thing out in like 5 minutes on the train on the way home from work. And that song, it's kind of just about feeling justified in kind of taking revenge for something that happened to you, and it's definitely a fitting instrumental for that kind of feeling.
I would say that my favorite moment is also from Incendiary. Just the slam parts of that song just make me think back to high school, and just in high school, I think everybody, or at least I was, just a little angry at the world, and all
Isn't
that.
Everybody?
And so this music was it just brought me back to that time. And one of the things I'm really looking forward to is when we get on stage and play that tune live.
I'd like to see the reaction.
Yeah.
And actually, funny, just to expand on that. So Tyreek, I've known Tyreek since high school, and the first time we played music together was like 16 years ago.
Yeah.
And so Tyreek now is a college music professor and a neuroscientist and accomplished jazz and world music artist. But in high school, Tyreek was this massive football player who was the most pissed off guy I'd ever met in my life. And he would just wear this like big like trench coat. And yeah, I remember when we first started playing music, I was like, Tyreek is a really imposing guy. So I don't know, it's definitely fun to kind of now, like almost 2 decades later, we're like so much has happened, but we're kind of like still where we were then. And yeah, honestly, this band, the Illusory Self, like, John, like a lot of the bands that like we talk about and love, like, Poison the Well and just like that early like 2000s kind of really like pissed off metalcore era. we try to like bring a lot of that into it. Yeah, it's fun.
Yeah, it's funny thinking back to high school, and I just had a lot of stuff to kind of get out of me, just energy, and football was one way, but music was definitely just the other major avenue. And so being able to find Dan and also Marcus, who is the guitarist in the Hudson Horror, we really kind of started this band in high school, and so finding those two guys to play music with was really cool. And now it seems like we've almost kind of flip-flopped. Like Dan has the anger and the energy, and most of the time I just lay back and play bass.
Well, Dan's also become a pretty imposing dude over the years from the pictures I've seen from then to now.
Yes, he has. That's for damn sure.
So 2 points on that. I was definitely pissed off in high school. I was just way too high to do anything about it. And Tyreek can actually, I remember when I got my deadlifts up to 500 and I was like, yes, finally I can, do this one thing better than Tyreek. And then we were like coming to practice for that band and I was like, yo, guess what? I'm pulling 500 now. And Tyreek was like, yeah, man, like, I've been at 515 for a minute. I was like, God damn. Yeah, man, good times. It's like, and kind of the track Inclined to Shadows is kind of like about this feeling that like, no matter like, how much things kind of change in your life or how much you grow as a person, your kind of true self is essentially the same. And there's a bit of like, sometimes when I write lyrics, I like to do like kind of put it in this fictional kind of situation that really articulates kind of the underlying feeling. But basically that's what Inclined to Shadows is about. It's kind of like this, identity statement of like, okay, like no matter what I do, like this is who I am. It's kind of like a metalhead pissed off guy that's inclined to shadows, right? Like, so that was cool. It's cool to have that as a closer and kind of, I really dig the outro of that song because it's like really like classic, like almost like a Kill Switch riff or something.
It's a very Kill Switch title too.
Yeah, I mean, I was definitely thinking of Kill Switch when I heard it as well. But the one thing that we haven't done is like, so I was never really a fan of it. It's just like, the good cop, bad cop, like, clean choruses, clean anything really, except for like there's an intro or outro that calls for it.
You like so much music that has that though. Like I know whenever we go back and forth about bands, it's like almost always something kind of in that zone.
You gonna dox me on this one, John? But yeah, I mean, it's good shit, but it's, I don't know, man. I'm just not really about putting it out. Like no hate on it. Like you said, like I'm a fan of a lot of it, but I don't know. What happened?
It's not your go-to.
I've always listened to stuff like that, but honestly, until I was like 25, listening to music that didn't have any screaming was like not an option. And like even now when I do, it's like something like Drug Church or like End of a Year or like Touche Amore, where it's just like, well, he's not singing, he's kind of just more talking, you know what I mean?
Singing, yeah.
But yeah, I mean, definitely that era was really instrumental for everyone, really. But then back then, like Tyreek came in and he was like, all right, let me show you a little something called Necrophagist. I was like, oh shit, what is this?
Yeah, that was always my jam, was the more technical stuff, because when I was learning how to play guitar, it was always like something to aspire to be able to play those riffs and get them clean. And so I was always like on the hunt for technical stuff. And I remember in college, back when we had DC++ and i2 Hub, which were like those file sharing services. And I would just go and type in the word like tech death or the phrase tech death and just download anything that showed up on those lists and just kind of poured over all of that material. And I got so excited about it when I would come back from, break or whatever. I'd go to Dan's house, or he would come over and be like, yo, man, you got to check this stuff out. And we need to write some music like this. So it's been a blessing to kind of come back around to actually writing music like this after, all of us going away for college and, starting careers and things like that. To come back around to making this music has been a blessing.
Yeah. Yeah, I'm glad you're doing it. It's been speaking of technical stuff too, it's been a big year for tech death and progressive death. I don't know if you've heard the new Warforged yet. They actually dropped the full stream today as of recording with like a full music video for the whole thing, and it's insanity.
That's first on my list when I get home tonight.
Adrian billed it as basically music he wants to ruin your day. that was his primary description of it. He said, don't go in wanting to have fun, because you're not going to.
Sold. I'm sold.
Yeah. So you obviously got into, teaching music from that realm of interest. How'd you get into neuroscience?
I had always been kind of interested in science. And so my first undergrad was in engineering. And so I'd always been kind of interested in numbers and, how things work. And so when I went to music school, I studied composition there. And on the side, I had been, I went to a school in Boston at Berkeley College of Music. And on the side, I had been going up to MIT for lectures and Harvard Extension for lectures that they were doing. And some people there were actually doing some, music psychology research. So anytime there were any of those events happening, I would go up and check them out. And when I got out of school, I was pretty much gigging full time. And that was great, but I had always had this itch to do more with it. So I kind of figured out through, just looking at different schools and seeing what programs were out there that I could do an interdisciplinary doctorate at Columbia University. And so when I kind of got myself together enough to move back to New York, I applied and was accepted to the program. And from there, I started working at a lab. And I was initially going to go into just cognitive science, but the more and more I looked into it, I was like, I want to actually learn about the brain and, how musicians' brains work. And, when we play music or when we listen to music, what are the networks that are involved in that? Because there are a lot of benefits to studying that. And so I started working at a lab and started doing research with a postdoc there who also was studying music and neuroscience, as it so happens. And so we've been working on a few research projects, and we had a paper that was published last year, and we have a couple of other projects that are up for review right now. And so it's been interesting. It's not a linear path. Like things have just kind of come
evolved
up here and there, and I've just kind of gone with them and kind of seen where those paths have led, and it kind of brought me here.
Yeah. That's cool, man. We're going to have to chat more about that sometime because, my primary field is counseling, and that's become a bigger and bigger part of sort of the forefront of where counseling is going and how we're perceiving things, how we're looking at treatments and interventions. And even just in the past 3 or 4 years, I would say, I've learned a ton that has completely changed and informed the way that I look at trauma and how I work with clients and how I train specialists on how to work with their families and how that actually impacts people at the brain level. I do trainings showing how much the brain is impacted by trauma and neglect and all this stuff, and what a difference it makes when you use kind of the right practices to sort of do like non-invasive brain surgery, so to speak. It's fascinating stuff. I'm really excited to see kind of where it goes in the future.
Yeah, same here. It's very new research, and that, you know, this field. I specifically work with like improvisation and, you know, what the brain networks are essentially doing when we improvise, and that particular branch of the field is really new. So there's a lot of territory yet to cover, and so it's an exciting time to be involved in this research. So, like you, I'm excited to see what people are gonna discover in the next few years, and hopefully I'll discover something too.
Yeah. And I'm really interested to see how music kind of plays into all that too. Like, it's been cool to see research articles coming out talking about how the stigma that like metal music is like bad for you and it's like, you know, going to turn you into a Satan worshiper. I feel like that's mostly gone. Like, I don't know anybody like who honestly still believes that anymore, but it's cool how it's kind of reversed, where there's articles coming out now that's saying how like there are health benefits to it and like what's the good side of it. And so I'll be interested to see like more detail on that. Like, what are they going to find out? Because I've found it to be hugely therapeutic over the years, and it's just kind of fun to be this, like, I'm a really laid back guy. I'm not at all like, I'm not a yeller. I'm not an aggressive guy. I don't get in people's faces. And then in my work, you know, I'm doing this kind of compassion work, and then people see me drive out of the parking lot and I'm blasting like Artificial Brain and all this really crazy music, and it's led to some fun conversations. And it was kind of cool over the years too to get kids in that also listen to that music and have them have the opportunity to kind of talk about it, because even though, you know, there's a metal community out there for sure, but when you're kind of in it and you're still a kid and you haven't found it yet, you can feel sort of alone.
Yeah, absolutely. I would say, I think we can all agree that the biggest benefit that we've found in metal music is the community, because when you find it, it's a beautiful thing. You know, just going out to shows with a bunch of friends, and you know, there's nothing like it.
Let's go like way back. Like, what were the bands that you would say kind of brought you all together way back when? Like, what were the big ones?
I mean, I don't know. With Steve, like, it was really just, it was us playing shows together. Like, Steve's band at the time, and then Tyreek and I in the Hudson Horror, we'd be like on all these bills together in New York. But then I'd say for Tyreek, for you and I, it's got to be like In Flames, and like, I want to say Vital Remains too.
Absolutely.
Like, De-Christianize.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Yeah, it was definitely, you know, the old school In Flames, Vital Remains, and like actually some hardcore too, like E-Town.
Yes.
Concrete.
E-Town's awesome.
Yeah, so it was that kind of stuff that like Dan and I, we were really into. And, you know, in high school there were maybe 5 people that we knew of that were into this music, and we all ended up in the same band.
Yeah.
So, you know how that goes. What about you, Steve?
I listened to, like, I think predominantly different stuff than you guys. I mean, I was more into like metalcore and stuff like that. I like a lot of death metal, not as much as I would say Dan, and I'm not a big hardcore guy. I like a lot of it. It's just not, you know, my go-to.
Any particular metalcore bands?
Yeah, I mean, I love Killswitch Engage.
You're all about Architects, man.
Architects is like my favorite.
Dude, yeah, man, Lost Together, Lost Forever.
That album is great.
Amazing album. It's got the best of like any album, man.
Ever.
I was really, I gotta say, I was disappointed with their latest one quite a bit, but the last 2 were good.
Talking it up so much, and it's a very good album. But like the one before this new one was great. All I Got's for Bandness was awesome. Yeah. And the one before that we were just talking about was obviously, I think, That's probably my favorite.
Yeah, that's got to be their best. Like every song is an anthem. Like I can listen to that album all day, especially when driving. Like, and I'm screaming along to everything. Lots of great sing-along moments. Yeah.
Yep. That's how. I mean, I'm like that with All Our Gods Have Abandoned Us too. That album, a lot of it sounds the same, which can bore
it's similar.
most people. But for some reason, that album like hits me so hard. There's so much emotion in it. I really enjoy it.
Yeah.
I was a big Trivium fan when I was younger. Like, I was a big metalcore guy, but I mean, I listen to everything.
Yeah. I remember the first moment I heard, like, what is it, like Light to the Flies or whatever.
Yeah,
it came. I got one of those like sampler discs that they used to pass out or would just like throw on the floor, and it was on there with like a whole bunch of other stuff. Like I think 3 Inches of Blood was on there, and just like,
oh man, Deadly Sinners.
Yeah, man, it was just like all this random stuff that like hadn't really come out yet, and a lot of them went on to become like huge. And yeah, that Trivium track, I never became a big Trivium fan, but I loved that song. And
that album was really, really good. Ascendancy.
Yeah, it's a classic.
Yeah. But I mean, right now, like, my tastes have changed. Like now I listen to like I love the new Rivers of Nile record. I think that record is absolutely phenomenal.
Yeah, that was one of my favorites of last year.
Oh, yeah, absolutely.
And I wasn't a big fan of them prior to that album, actually, but that definitely brought me into the fold.
Yeah, I liked them before that album as well. But this new one like blew my mind. It definitely I like when bands that like, because they strictly played straight up death metal before this, and with this record they kind of branched out and touched on multiple different genres. I mean, you hear some like some like psychedelic rock on there at times. Like it's cool.
Yeah, if you like that, then I think you're gonna dig this Warforged album. It's definitely darker and it's probably more aggressive, but it's got that same kind of expansiveness to it where it really goes in a lot of different directions. There's some like quieter parts. There's the really loud, intense moments.
Yeah,
it's great.
Wait, John. So just to clarify, you like the Warforged record?
No, I know. I can't shut up about it.
Dude, yeah, I'm gonna the full stream's up. I'm gonna probably listen to it on the ride home.
I gotta stop overhyping it. I don't want to do that.
You're gonna ruin it for us.
Yeah, you have like, I feel like your takes on stuff are pretty spot on. So if you're like giving it that much hype, then it probably deserves that much hype.
Okay, good. Like that's what I try to do. Like I try to save that level of hype for when it's really truly deserved. But there's just so much good music out there.
There certainly is, man. And now, like, the way things are with, like, production and streaming, it's just out there, man. You know what I mean? Like, and if you have a laptop and, like, a little bit of hardware, you can put something out there, you know?
Yeah.
And then $20 and you're up on, like, all streaming services.
Yeah.
It's wild.
And if you especially know like how to market yourself, like that's a big thing. Like I just saw Frontier, they just posted that they put up their latest round of records. They sold out in a minute. I was like, Jesus Christ. That's amazing.
Like a lot of popularity. Though.
Yeah, that and pretty much like because they haven't been signed or anything that I'm aware of, like that dude just like hustles like crazy and just made it happen. And that's like really cool to see people do.
The Dillinger fans love them.
Yeah.
From what I've seen. You gotta check out a band called Circuit of Suns. You ever hear them?
No.
They're phenomenal.
All right.
Circuit of Suns. Check them out.
Circuit of Suns? All right.
Yeah.
I'll check that one out too.
They're in like that Car Bomb Frontier
Car Bomb's
kind of sound.
Shit. Ugh.
You'll like Circuit of Suns if you like
Car Bomb. Yeah.
For sure.
I think Car Bomb's working on some new stuff too. So
they've toured together, those Circuit of Suns and
really?
Car Bomb. Yeah, Circuit of Suns is great. I'm buddies with the guitar player, Mike. They're dope. Definitely check them out.
Going back to, we were talking about In Flames a little bit. I really do like hearing people's like the first song they heard and like, do they remember the moment? I've been doing starting to do series of videos on that. Do you remember like what the first In Flames song you heard, or like, do you have any specific memory associated with that?
It was Colony, like the record Colony. I don't remember which song it was, but I remember that. So Tyreek and I and Marcus and a couple of friends of ours, we all went to this Catholic high school, and for the talent show, we covered Resin, right? That's what it's called?
Yeah, Resin.
And it was so funny because like everyone, all the kids like went nuts and like loved it, but the people that were judging the contest were all like retirement age nuns. And they just like they hated it, man.
So it was like Back to the Future. I'm sorry, you guys are just too darn loud.
Right. Yeah, that was exactly it.
Oh, no.
It was really wild though, because the demographic of the school was very homogenous, let's say. And so you wouldn't expect a song like that to get the kind of cheers that it got. So that in and of itself was really kind of wild to have that kind of response from these kids, because metal at that school wasn't really a thing.
Yeah. But they were craving it even more because they'd been so repressed.
Yeah, probably.
Yes, absolutely.
I think for me, it was Pinball Map. The In Flames song that really kind of got me going. I was like, yeah, I need to buy a 7-string guitar and like, tune it down to drop A and learn how to play this stuff, because, just the energy, it really kind of, I had a certain kind of like energy signature, if you want to call it that. And, that kind of stuff like In Flames and Soilwork it basically matched my energy signature. And so playing that kind of stuff was like, it was something that I needed to do. And Pinball Map was the first song that I heard that really kind of like did it for me.
I got into In Flames really late. Like, I think the first song I heard was like Delights and Angers from A Sense of Purpose.
But dang, that is late. God, that album is where things
late.
Really went wrong too.
Very late. But then, like, obviously I went, back through their discography, and there was gems all over the place, and it was super heavy. Yeah. They're a great band. I don't really dig their new stuff. I haven't met anyone who, they're out there apparently, but I haven't met anyone who enjoys their new stuff face to face. People will like it. They're gonna grab new fans with the new stuff, and
there's always
older
market
fans
out there.
Be like, screw that new In Flames, it's horrible.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, well, it's like, man, I'm kind of over it, but I'm kind of not. But like, they basically like define this genre like them at the gates, and it's just like this amazing music, and then like they're like, no, like I'd rather sound like the inside of a Monster Energy drink.
But like you can't make Colony 15 times, Like
yes,
yeah.
Dude.
Look at the Black Dahlia murder.
I'm totally cool with bands. I guess. But like, I'm totally cool with bands developing their sound and evolving. It's natural. I mean, people, their taste change. You grow, and you don't want to play the same stuff you were playing 15 years ago.
Yeah.
Your mind's in a different place. Your life's in a different place.
Yeah.
I get it. People get old. They get
and then 20 years from now, they'll write Colony again.
Yeah.
And
I mean,
fans will come back, they'll go on tour, and then they'll do a farewell tour, and they'll do it.
I greatly appreciate and respect that, and also I respect anyone who likes anything, no matter what I think of it, because I'm just one dude. But to me, there's a difference between evolving and just like not making good music anymore.
They've been evolving towards that like electronic sound, and it's like kind of industrial.
Yeah, because they're kicking out the guitar players, and now the singer is just writing everything.
And I was relatively late to them too, because the first song I heard from them was Cloud Connected, but I still I like that. Like, I know there was a lot of fans from the old days who were already pissed off at the direction they took on that album, but that's still one of my favorite albums from them, and that Cloud Connected song is fucking awesome. I just have fond memories of it too, because I just remember there was this one specific week where I just downloaded a bunch of songs from bands that I just discovered, and so in that 1 week I heard Cloud Connected from In Flames, I heard Future Breed Machine from Meshuggah.
Oh, yeah.
And I think I heard Opeth for the first time that week, too. So, my mind was just completely destroyed.
That's a heavy week, bro.
I couldn't handle those 3 bands all in 1 week, like discovering them all at the same time.
Yeah.
There's like way too much to take in.
Yeah.
That's awesome. What a great week.
Yeah.
Oh, it was. Like, I remember driving around, just back when we would just drive around aimlessly, doing nothing, getting into trouble, and we'd just always have some burned CD of just the most recent stuff we'd gotten off of LimeWire or whatever that we'd heard about in, like, Guitar World magazine or something.
Those are some of the best mixes, man.
Yeah, man. Those are the days.
I got a CD player in my car, and I just, like, got out the old stuff, and I've been having fun with that.
I remember I was on LimeWire searching for Slipknot's Meet, Feed, Kill, Repeat for like weeks. Because like you couldn't get it anywhere.
Yeah.
Those were the days.
I remember that my longest downloading string was finding the pre-Adrenaline Deftones songs.
Oh, yeah, we've talked about that.
Yeah, like the Engine Number 9 demo and like all that stuff, all the stuff that ended up being on like Linus, and that was like, oh god, it must have been like 13, and yeah, that was a very expanded state for for like a month or so there.
Yeah. That was always fun trying to find like the bootleg stuff, like the B-sides and everything. It was risky though, because sometimes you'd find stuff that was labeled as like a bootleg song from a band, and then you found out for someone else that it's like, dude, that's not even them. That's like that's some other band.
Yep. Well, it was like the Wild Wild West back then, man. Before we had, big corporations to make sure our streams are safe.
I used to go to this place, Bleecker Street Records, in Manhattan on Bleecker Street, obviously. And they had the craziest bootlegs. Like, crazy live cuts you couldn't find anywhere. Like, stuff you could see on YouTube now, but, like, YouTube didn't exist.
Yeah.
Like, random B-sides you had, or rarities you had never heard. Like, unreleased songs, like, from all kinds of bands.
That's awesome.
I used to love that stuff. And now it's like everything's on YouTube. If there is, like, some random unreleased stuff, it's like you can find it so easily.
I mean, I like that, man, because like I'm lazy now. You know what I mean? I don't miss the hunt, man. Like I just type in what I want and there it is.
I love that stuff because I would go in there and see like this crazy like album cover of like some like photographer took like a live shot and it like wound up being the bootlegs cover, and I was like, I have to buy this. Like this looks insane.
Yeah.
And I would buy records based on album covers. It's like
yeah, I did that a few times too.
I discovered so many cool records just by, all right, this looks cool, let me buy it. And it wound up being great. Sometimes it was horrible, and I wasted $10 or whatever. At least the album art was cool.
Definitely, yeah. That's how it was. What were we with Schmidt? He'd always want to go down to, was it Generation
Records? Yeah. So yeah, we're being New York based, we would go to Bleecker Street. We definitely go to Bleecker Street Records, but then Generation Records in New York, which is actually still around, not nearly as much in the way of CDs and vinyl that they used to have, but that place had a lot of obscure just metal stuff. It was primarily metal and rock focused music, and so we go in there and they just had millions of t-shirts, vinyl, CDs, all that stuff. So Dan, Marcus, and a mutual friend and we'd go down there and spend hours looking through records and all that. And those are good times. Again, trying to find records, and sometimes buying them based on just the way it looked and all of that. But then just discovering some really rare stuff was really cool.
My dad was like a big Beatles guy, and Bleecker Street Records had like tons of like rare Beatles stuff. But every time he bought a live Beatles album, the only thing you heard were girls screaming, and you heard no music. You heard like a snare drum and a cymbal every now and then, and that was it. Just people screaming like, "Dad, why'd you buy this?" He's like, "You gotta listen, it's great." I'm like, "All right."
I mean, it's cool with everything that's out there now. Like, I agree that I wouldn't want to necessarily go back to that, but I do kind of like, I'm still definitely nostalgic for it. I do kind of miss the hunt. There's a chain in Chicago called Reckless Records. I think they're still around, and they were always a good place to find, like, especially used stuff that people had traded in, and they had plenty of metal stuff there. But then like I grew up in the burbs, like before that was all mostly in like college where I was doing that. But in the burbs, like we had, I mostly went to like
Goody?
Sam Goody was another one. But in any case, yeah, it was all like main chains for me. I had a moment just last year that was kind of depressing because my buddies and I would usually just go to Best Buy and we'd pick up the latest CD there, and also like movies and stuff too. We'd browse around and like we were big film buffs, so we'd get our metal and we'd get our depressing, disturbing movies like Requiem for a Dream and stuff like that, because that's what we were into. But I went to Best Buy because occasionally I'll go there because they have good price. They had good prices on like new release. Like sometimes you could get stuff for like $7, like if you got it release week. So I went to get like a big release and I was like, okay, they'll probably have this because it's on a major label and everything. And finally they had like one CD rack left the time I'd been there before. And then I came in there and it was just gone. There were no more CDs at all, period. And I just looked at the worker and they were like, can I help you find something? I'm like, no, man. It finally happened, didn't it? And he like knew what I was talking about because he was about the same age as me. He was like, yeah. It finally happened. And I was like, oh, dude, that's like the end of an era. Fucking crazy.
My other band, Dead Wake, played at this place, Dark Side Records, last week in Poughkeepsie. This place had everything from CDs, vinyl, cassettes, and even they had like a case of 8-tracks. And my head like exploded. But I was like, how do they even have these? Like still, Led Zeppelin 8-track tapes. So the place was awesome. There's a stage in there, so it's like a live music venue. Tons of vinyl. Really cool place. If anyone's in that area, go check out Dark Side Records. I don't think I've ever seen an 8-track honestly until I walked in there.
Yeah, that's wild.
It's pretty crazy.
I've been pretty fortunate here in Portland that they still have some pretty solid record stores around.
They're like just like going away here in the city. I think there's like very few left.
Yeah, there's not many, but yeah.
Yeah, Poughkeepsie definitely, like, I would say that growing up, like, definitely, like, Poughkeepsie and the Chance was probably, like, more, instrumental to me getting into music and, like, because we were where me, Marcus, and Tyreek, we all lived, like, about 45 minutes outside of the city. Marcus and Tyreek were from the city and moved up. I was up there, and then like 45 minutes from there is Poughkeepsie, and there was like definitely like a really cool scene there too, like when we were all in our teen years. So it was cool. It's kind of like a nice spot to be in, up in like Westchester County, because you can go down to the city pretty quick, or you can go up there, and then like Connecticut, like Jersey. Not that you want to go there, but like everything's like pretty close. You know what I mean?
Yeah, the Chance was a big venue. Back in the day. I don't know if it's still.
Yeah.
I think it's still going.
Cool.
Final thoughts, things you want to shout out, things you want fans to know, shows coming up, things like that.
Yeah, we're currently rehearsing, and we will be bringing this EP to a stage soon, hopefully in the fall. I know these two guys here are getting married to, not together.
Yeah, I was just gonna say not to each other though. I've seen the significant other pictures, so I know it's not each other.
Yeah, but they're both in the throes of planning weddings, so
It's been busy.
It's been busy, but we're gonna start bringing this stuff out there. And in the meantime, I'm around New York. I gig with a few different bands. I play with a big band. If you're into like jazz, but also metal, like gent, and want to hear jazz metal covers of pop songs, I play with the band. Yeah. So I play with the band called Adam Neely's Jazz School, and I actually play guitar in that band. And so we have a gig coming up on June 30th at National Sawdust. And but yeah, I'm around the city with various groups, so you can follow me if you want. I post my gigs regularly. So
killer.
That's it. New EP's out. It's called Dead Gods. Check it out. We put out an EP last year, Praise the Fantastic. Check that out. Definitely a good variety of subgenres, I'd say. And even though we just dropped something, we're still working on new stuff. So I'm sure you'll see new music in 2019 as well, again, from
Nice.
us.
That's what I like to hear. I'll put links down in the description, too.
Thanks, Ben.
And that'll do it for this week's episode of Trench Talk. I hope you enjoyed it as much as I did. Once more, please do subscribe to the channel if you have not already. Give the video a like if you enjoyed it. Consider sharing it with others. Follow us on social media. And one more time, consider signing up for our mailing list, because that's the only way to guarantee that you don't miss any of our content. I send out an email personally every Friday. And again, for you returning listeners who really feel like you're getting added value from this podcast and the other content, please do consider checking out the link to our Patreon account. Just $1 a month makes a huge difference. And at higher tiers, you get more perks like early access to these podcasts and personal shoutouts. Thank you as always for listening, but for now, this is Flight of Icarus signing off. I will see you in the trenches.